Welcome to lecture 10. We will continue our discussion on applications of operational amplifiers. We finished 5 different configurations. Let me draw the 6th one, and then you can tell me how it works, and then we will discuss about some of the subtleties in these configurations. Okay. So far we have only used resistors as feedback elements. You need not only have resistors, you can have other inductors and capacitors also as feedback elements. So I want you to calculate the transfer function or the output versus input for this particular circuit. And let me give an input here. This is V in, and I'm looking at V out over here. Right? Hari Vignesh, have you seen this circuit before?
Yes, sir, we have seen.
Okay, what does this do?
Sir, I have to work it out. I don't remember.
Okay. How would you work this out? First is the important assumption. We need to identify whether this circuit has negative feedback or not. Okay. So I'm going to tell you that for now you assume negative feedback and do a calculation. After that, we'll have a discussion regarding this. Okay. For now, assume negative feedback and do the calculation. Priyadarshini, what would V out by V in be here? Any ideas? Ashwin? Aman? Are you people even connected?
Yes, sir.
Then answer, right? Say something. So I told you that I'm assuming negative feedback, which means you can say that the voltage at this node, the V plus node, which is 0, is identical to the voltage at the V minus node. So that is also 0. And we already know that no current enters into the op amp. No current enters into the op amp. So where will the current flow? What is the current through the resistor? V in by R. Where will that current flow? Ashwin?
Capacitor.
Through the capacitor, correct. So if that current flows through the capacitor, what would V out be? This is 0 and you have the same current flowing through the capacitor.
C dV by dt.
Yes. C dV by dt? How can the voltage be CV dV by dt?
No, sir. Current.
Current. Okay. So the current through the capacitor, I through the capacitor is C. I should suppose I call this as VC. Okay. What is VC in terms of V out?
Minus V out.
Minus V out.
Minus V out, right? Okay. Very good. So now what is V out then? Just put it over there. Is this reasonable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what is this this circuit doing?
Integrator.
Huh? Divider.
Integrator.
Integrator. Correct. Okay. So if you assume negative feedback, then you get V out is minus 1 by RC integral V in dt. But as I told you, we have to check this idea about negative feedback, whether it actually exists or not. Anybody who has a comment on that? Anybody who has a comment on that? Does negative feedback exist for all frequencies? What about at DC? For DC, that is, if you have just a constant voltages, is there any feedback?
No.
No.
What will happen to the circuit if there is no feedback?
Open.
Hmm?
Infinite the capacitor.
Sorry?
Infinite impedance of the capacitor. Resistance will be infinite.
That is correct. But if there is no feedback, what would V out be? See, if there is no feedback, then there is no negative feedback clearly. Implies you cannot say V plus is equal to V minus. Okay. V plus is 0, that is clear. V minus is some quantity. So what will happen to the V? What will happen to V out? What will happen to V out?
Tending to infinity.
It will tend to infinity, right? Because you know that the op amp, the basic op amp itself has this property. The basic op amp has this property, right? That it just does A times V plus minus V minus. So it will go to infinity. Now, can you have an infinite voltage in your circuit?
No.
So what does this mean? Clearly, I cannot have an infinite voltage in my circuit. But when there is no feedback, you expect the voltage to be large. So what's happening? So
Amplifier.
this is an amplifier, that is okay. Keep in mind that all of your op amp circuits, no, we are only drawing, for example, these, whatever is there here. Now, I don't have any feedbacks for DC because at DC, the capacitor has infinite impedance. So I've opened it. Okay. But keep in mind that is something we are forgetting. All op amps need two more connections, which is the power supply for the op amp. We don't draw it normally. So there's a power supply and there is usually an op amp needs a positive supply and a negative supply. So there is a positive supply VCC and there is a negative supply minus VCC. Okay, so typically, for example, all op amps need power supply the most common op amps need a positive supply and a negative supply. Okay, more sophisticated op amps can work with plus VCC and ground as the supplies. So these kind of op amps are called as single supply op amps. Usually they are more expensive. They're more involved internally regarding how they achieve operation. But basically the idea is that any op amp needs power supply. Okay. So now you tell me, if I do not have any feedback, I've connected some input. What do you expect? Sorry, that is not V plus. That is V minus. This is V plus. Clearly in this configuration, your V plus is 0 and your V minus, because there is no feedback, is V in. So your V out, which is A times V plus minus V minus, will be what? This is going to tend to minus infinity, right? Suppose if V in were positive. Otherwise, it will tend to plus infinity. Okay. So this, you really can never hit infinity. What will happen is that the op amp output will saturate at one of the power supply rails. So it will either go and saturate, in principle, it is not even, it will saturate at, but it will saturate near one of the power supply rails. So suppose your power supply were 15 volts, it may go and saturate around 13 volts or so. Similarly, if the power supply is 5 volts, you will go and saturate around 3, 4 volts, things like that. Okay, depending on the op amp. More sophisticated op amp designs allow you to go all the way close to the power supply. Those op amps are called rail-to-rail op amps. Those are all details. Okay, but the important thing is that the output of the op amp will saturate. So if I were to modify the characteristics of this op amp for a more realistic case, then what I should do is to say that, okay, this is all right, but I need to have a caveat. So I have, for example, a plot of, on my input side, let me say V in, which is identical to V plus minus V minus. This is not the V in which is there on the previous slide. I'm just going back to a more general definition of the input. Okay, and this is my output. Then yes, there is a region where this V out by V in has a very, very steep slope. That's where you have the infinite input, infinite gain. So this slope will be extremely steep. but the output would saturate close to the power supply rails. So suppose many times you assume that it saturates at the power supply itself. It's all right. So it's actually going to saturate here and there. And so these voltages where it saturates are close to the power supply. So maybe your power supply, possibly your power supply is somewhere here, there, and maybe here. Okay. Many times for hand calculations, we will assume that it's saturating at the power supply itself. But more sophisticated calculations, you can assume that it's not saturating at the power supply. It's saturating slightly below the power supply. Does this make sense to all of you? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So we have a problem. So we don't have any feedback for DC here. The integrator does not, as drawn here, does not have any DC feedback. Okay. So what will happen is that if you give a DC input to the integrator, what do you expect if I give a DC input to the integrator?
Output should increase linearly.
Output should increase linearly, right? So going back to our integrator, say I have an ideal integrator. Say I have an ideal integrator. So this, I'm calling this as an ideal integrator. Let me say this, this guy basically does the following operation, that it does -1 by tau into integral. Okay, that's the minus sign is just, it so happens because I've started with an inverting configuration. Does not matter, but I'm assuming that to be my ideal integrator, including the negative sign. Does not matter for this discussion. All right. Now, suppose I give V in here. What do you expect as V out? -1 by tau integral V in dt. Okay. So now suppose my V in were a constant. Suppose my V in was this. This is V in. Okay. So, and let me say that this quantity is some A, or no, not take A, I'll take B. Some B, that's the amplitude. So what would you expect V out to be?
Some BT plus constant.
All right. And I assume that at 0, my output is 0.
BT linear.
BT, but because this tau is there, what should it be?
B tau.
Minus BT by tau, right? So if I were to take the output, I expect the output to go something like this. What would be the slope of this? That's the function, right? Minus BT by tau. So the slope is going to be minus B by tau, right? So an ideal integrator, even without me worrying about the op-amp saturation and all of that, an ideal integrator automatically will the voltage will integrate all the way to infinity. Correct. But now that because there is a power supply limitation somewhere, suppose that was my power supply limitation, then effectively the output of the integrator will come until here, and then it will saturate. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Suppose this is minus VCC. Then the output saturates. So this is the case even if you have the circuit working as a nice integrator. All right. Now suppose instead of having this kind of a instead of having this as my input, let me say I have a slightly different input. Okay, same thing, but what I'll do is I will break this up. I'll not give a constant DC. I'm going to have something like this. Okay. Something like that. Now what would the output be? Somebody?
So
Then
from
we-
that point, that
Ah.
constant will come.
From that
Like-
point, it will become a constant.
Yeah.
Then
the same thing, like a slope.
the
line
same
with
thing will
slanting.
happen, right? Okay. Then you'll have a line. Then you'll have a flat, and so on and so forth. Okay. So far, so good. Okay. That's very good. But keep in mind that this is if the circuit is actually so only if there is feedback does this particular circuit have the transformation, the transfer function as we have drawn here, -1 by tau. If there is no feedback, then you are actually in this mode of operation, in the open loop mode. Okay, so the long story short, a more practical integrator circuit is the following. A practical integrator has a resistor here, capacitor there. That is as we already know, but it's another resistor which is connected in parallel. I'll call that as RPC. This is R. Okay. Now, can you work out what is the transfer function for this? Then we'll understand how this behaves. Again, you assume negative feedback and work out, and then you check whether you actually have negative feedback or not. So otherwise, you can't work out. So keep in mind that the relationship of minus R2 by R1, you can also extrapolate to impedances. So you can relate it to minus Z2 by Z1, where Z2 is the parallel combination of RP and C. So if this parallel combination was some Z2 and this guy was Z1, then your V out by V in is minus Z2 by Z1, which in this case is what? Somebody work out and tell me. Now you have to work in complex domain. So work in the S domain. What is RP parallel C? That's your RP parallel capacitor. Whole thing divided by R. What would this be? RP by R into 1 divided by 1 plus S RPC. Does this make sense? Hari Vignesh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The sanity is to send RP to infinity. And then you have to get back your old result. There's a minus sign. I forgot the minus sign. If I send RP to infinity, what will I get? Here, divide numerator and denominator by RP, sorry. Then you will have a 1 by RP term. You can drop that. So you will land up with minus 1 by SRC, which is what this is. If in the S domain, V out of S is minus 1 by SRC, right? Okay, good. So sanity is okay. Now I can just draw the Bode plot for this transfer function, and that will give you something very interesting. Let me just draw the Bode plot for this. Help me out, please. For this transfer function, minus RP by R, 1 by S into RPC, only the magnitude. That is, yeah. How would it start? Where is the, what is the pole going to be? What is the corner frequency? What's the critical frequency I need to worry about? Sachin?
Pole at 0.
No,
1 by S.
no, you're guessing. Don't guess. This is something we have already done, right?
Pole is in
1 by RPC.
1 by RPC. Yes. 1 by RPC. Okay. So up to that frequency, how will the transfer function look? Be flat, right? RP by R. After that corner frequency, how will it go? Minus 20 dB per decade. What is this value going to be? We have already done this. What is that value going to be? Archit? Archit? Are you there? Archit?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So please, decency, if you don't know the answer, you should say you don't know. All of you. Don't let me just, don't let me hang. It's not nice.
N by RPC.
1 by? Sorry?
N by RPC.
I can't hear.
So 10 by RPC.
10? No.
100 by
No,
RPC.
it cannot be any number. It cannot be any number. This is 1, keep in mind. Okay, let us look at that carefully. Okay, so now I need to get in terms of omega. So V out by Vn of j omega is minus Rp by R into 1 plus j omega RPC. Correct? Now keep in mind that I am asking you the behavior of the transfer function after this corner frequency. I'm asking you the behavior of the transfer function after the corner frequency. So after the corner frequency, what is a good approximation for this transfer function? You can drop the 1 with respect to this term, right? So this fellow is roughly, so the magnitude Vn for omega greater than or significantly greater than 1 by RPC. This is 1 by RPC. What is this? RP by R into, I'm going to drop this 1 by RPC. Correct? Those two terms will go. Now keep in mind that I am asking you the question as to, so this fellow is Rp by R, this fellow is 1. This frequency, let me call that as omega u. That is, it's called the unity gain frequency. At omega is equal to omega u, by definition, modulus of V out by modulus of Vn is equal to 1. What is omega u? Please tell me what
RC.
1 by RC. Okay, so this is actually 1 by RC. Fine. In fact, you can take a more general case, and there's a nice result there for this first order kind of system. You can take a more general case, and suppose I were to write this gain as some A naught, okay, and let this be omega naught, and this be omega u. Then the interesting result is that because this is 1, right? Then the interesting result is that how much have you gone down by A naught, right? You have gone down by A naught. Then you will go to the right by the same amount A naught. That is, you can prove, and I'll leave that as an exercise for you to prove that omega u, this is a result we'll use more quite often. Omega u is approximately A naught times omega naught. Does that work for our calculation for the specific system that we have here? A naught is Rp by R into omega naught is 1 by RPC. And so you get your omega u as 1 by RC. Right? Okay. Let's go back. So this term is 1 by RC. Now, does this look like the transfer function of an integrator? Does this look like the transfer function of an integrator? Keep in mind, why did we introduce this RP? We introduced the RP so that we have DC feedback. so that we have feedback for DC. Otherwise, you would not have any feedback for DC. Okay. Now my question is, does this look like the transfer function of an integrator? What is the transfer function of an integrator? How should it look? Ideal integrator.
1 upon RCS plus 1.
No, that's not an ideal integrator. An ideal integrator is just 1 by S. How would the 1 by S look? That's an ideal integrator, right? One by S tau. The ideal integrator. If this were 1, what is this value? What is this value? When does 1 by S tau become equal to 1? What's the value of S? Or what's the value of omega? Ayush,
Sure, 1 by tau.
1 by tau, correct. Okay. The interesting thing is this particular integrator has infinite gain at DC. We already saw that, right? We saw it in different ways. We saw that you don't have any feedback at DC, and so you have effectively infinite gain. Multiple ways of seeing the same thing. Putting a resistor in parallel makes the gain at DC flat. So you limit the gain of the integrator. But the transfer function does not look like an integrator anymore, right? So how do you choose this RP such that your circuit still works as an integrator for the frequency of interest? Any ideas? Let me say that this some frequency omega. Let me call that some omega star. Can obviously I'm on this plot, this is omega, right? So where should omega lie? Can if omega is here, if my omega star is here, or my omega star is there, or my omega star is there. So 3 possibilities. Can you tell me in which case will it actually act as an integrator?
Left side of 1 by RPC.
For left side of 1 by RPC, are you going to get integration at all? How does the transfer function look? It's flat. An ideal integrator should have a transfer function which is 1 by S. You understand this? Have I lost you? Why are you people not replying to my questions?
Bolu, the second part.
Sorry? Tell me. Yeah, second part. That's good.
Yes, the second part.
Yeah. So this over here, it does not work as an integrator. This is okay. What about the third part? It's still 1 by S, but there is a slight subtlety there. What about here? Will it work as an integrator here? Keep in mind that this fellow is actually going down. It does integration. So if you give a sine, you will see something that looks like a cosine. But what will the amplitude be? You're going to have heavy attenuation here. It integrates all right. But so how should you choose your RC, which is your tau, and the RPC, which is the time constant for the parallel resistor, such that the frequency of interest, this circuit works as an integrator? It's only this one that is good, right? Only that's good. Others are bad. So you should basically work in this frequency in range. Right? So where would you put your omega? If you would want 1 by RPC to be less than the omega star of interest, less than 1 by RC. Only for these frequencies will the circuit we have actually work like an integrator. Now there's an important question. If I'm only interested in a certain omega, then why do I need to worry about DC feedback? Right? That is a question that you might have in mind. That why do I need to worry about DC feedback if I'm only looking at a certain frequency of interest? The answer to that is that your op-amp, even though an ideal op-amp is supposed to be such that if I give, for example, if I give a voltage V here and a V here, my output should be
0.
But what will happen is that the op-amp has a small offset, which means that when I give V here and V here, my output is non-zero. So this is modeled in the following way, that I have an ideal op-amp inside, but there is a small offset. You can draw it on any one of the arms, does not matter. And I can indicate any sign, that also does not matter. So this is your real op-amp. What I'm saying is that a real op-amp always has some input offsets. Very difficult to have an op-amp without any offset. You may get very low offset, but it will always be there. So even though your frequency of interest may not be DC, if you worked with this particular circuit, you can split up your input into the offset component, which is at DC, and your frequency component of interest. For DC, the gain is going to be infinity, and it's going to cause the op-amp to saturate, because for DC, there is no feedback. So once the op-amp has saturated, then whatever other frequency you have is not going to, it's not going to really respond to that frequency. Your op-amp is already saturated. So that's the reason why when you use a practical, when you use an op-amp as a practical integrator, you most always need to put a resistor in parallel. And you have to choose that resistor in such a way that the frequency of interest lies between 1 by RPC and 1 by RC. Point I'm saying is this, that at DC now, what is the gain? That is your DC gain, right? And the DC gain is finite. So what will happen is that whatever is this offset, because of the DC gain, will give you a finite offset at the output. That's okay. It's not going to harm you too much. If there was this offset and you did not have that RP resistor in parallel to your capacitor, your output will saturate. So it will no longer act as an integrator. Okay. So do you understand this well? All right, let me do a little bit more and then I'll stop. I have this frequency. If this is the frequency, what are the time constants? What are the time constants? So time constants, so I can talk about the times as, this is tau because of that parallel resistor. I can get the time period of my input frequency itself, but I need to include a 2 pi. Where should I include the 2 pi? Omega is 2 pi by time, right? So this is T divided by 2 pi. Okay. Tau P is just 1 by RC. There's a scaling factor of 2 pi in omega. That's all. Am I correct there? So omega is 2 pi by T. Okay. And I have my third time constant, which is just the integrated time constant tau. So how are these time constants going to be related? What will happen to this inequality when I look at the inverse? When I look at the reciprocal?
Reverse, it will get reversed.
It will get reversed, right? So I need to have this as my relationship. This 2 pi is not really critical, okay, but just in case you want to be correct. Okay. So there is a lot of intuition one can derive from this. Let's look at that again. I have this condition and I have my circuit like this. I have my R there. Capacitor, and I have a resistor in parallel. That's my circuit, right? RP, C, and R. Okay, what is tau, the time constant for? Tau is the time constant for this resistor and that capacitor. Correct? So it is the time constant to charge the capacitor. What about tau P? What is it? What is tau P the time constant for?
Discharging of capacitor.
So I'll just color it here again and this, right? Correct. So tau P is a time constant for to discharge the capacitor. So basically, if you want your circuit to work as an integrator, so your input has some time period, right? So my input has some time period. So your input may be a sine wave, some time period. So this is that is your time period. Okay. So what this relationship tells you is that the time to charge the capacitor has to be significantly smaller than the time period of your circuit. The time to charge the capacitor has to be significantly smaller than the time period of the circuit. Then you will have integration. At the same time, the time to discharge the capacitor has to be much larger than the time period of your circuit. Okay, it's under this condition that your system will work as a good integrator. Is this clear to everybody? Mull over this. You can try this out in LT Spice. What you can do is in LT Spice, in order to get a real op amp, just put a small offset as I've shown to any of the other op amps that you already use. Okay, there's one more point I want to see. That's this. If my frequency was in this range, if my frequency were in this range, if my frequency were in that range, what kind of operation is happening? You are integrating, but you are attenuating. So effectively, if you have an input in this frequency, you're not going to get much output at all. Right? That's good. So this kind of response, what kind of filter does it remind you of? What kind of filter does this response remind you of?
Low pass
Kirti?
filter.
It's a low pass filter, right? So this particular practical op amp, so sorry, this practical integrator is also a realization of a first order low pass filter. The important thing is depending on what frequency you are working at. See, you remember when we started the discussion on how to convert how to convert analog to digital. We had this discussion on the pulse width modulation. And then I said that once you have a pulse width modulated waveform, you can send it, you have to find the average. What is the average function? The average function, let me write this out. Averaging operation. So if I have some input V in of t, okay, so that may be something like this. For example, it's a pulse width modulated waveform, so it may be something like this, that this is my time period. This is half the time period. My waveform may be like this. Okay, that is, it has a pulse width which is slightly larger than the time period itself, then half the time period. Let me just draw this out clearly. So suppose this is my input. That's my input. Okay. So the time period is this. That is one time period. This is the second time period. Okay. Now, what is so this is average. This is V in of t. How would you define the average of V in of t? What is the definition? It's a periodic signal. So how will you define the average?
Integrate over one time period and divide by the time period.
0 to t divided by the time period. Correct? So can you now get the average using our integrator? Using our integrator and some other blocks, can you get the average of a signal? How would I get that? I'm not worried so much about the scale factors. I'm not worried about the scale factors. Okay, please think about this.